You're listening to a Mamma Mia podcast.
Mamma Mia acknowledges the traditional owners of the land we have recorded this podcast on, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. We pay our respects to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures.
I'm Claire Murphy, and this is No Filter. In the era of The Bachelor, Maths, Love Island and all the cooking, surviving, singing versions of the genre, reality TV's never been more intertwined in our lives. Though we do have a long way to go when it comes to ensuring we protect those who get married or abstain from sex for our own entertainment, reality TV has been around long enough for contestants to understand what they can gain from it too, especially with a few thousand extra followers added to their social media channels. 20 years ago, though, a much more reality-innocent Australia watched on as 12 people were catapulted from relative obscurity to household names, at least for a little while. Season 1 of Australian Idol was a sensation, a ratings hit that thrust phrases like go the fro and touchdown into the Australian lexicon.
This is the Grand Royale, man. That was a Grand Royale.
Also, Tuck Shop Lady Arms, but let's not dwell too long on that gem. Rob Mills was one of those household names.
I'm Millsy, family man, mummy's boy.
A 21-year-old with spiky blonde highlights, an eyebrow ring, and an amazing voice.
Well, I'm loving angels instead, and through it, oh, she offers me protection, a lot of love and affection.
He didn't win, but he did get a recording contract, making appearances at nightclubs, releasing a string of singles and having a very brief relationship with a very famous woman. A relationship that he can't seem to convince people to let go of or get over. But like most people who find themselves suddenly very famous at a young age, life wasn't always smooth sailing.
I was sad. I just got really sad. I was like, why am I so sad? It was like, you don't know who you are. Like everyone has an idea of who you are. People yelling out, Millsy, on the street. You're like, all right, good to see you. Thank you. And the Paris Hilton tag sort of was like hanging over my head everywhere I went, which is just so weird to me. But I was like, I don't want to be just that guy.
These days, Rob is loving life, working in musical theatre. And he's also released a book. But it's not the typical memoir you might expect. It's actually a look at modern masculinity and why men struggle to communicate with each other and the women in their lives. It's not the book I expected from Rob Mills at all, but it led to a pretty open conversation between us about his past.
I look back at that and go, I've got no answer other than that's the film clip that I was given, and then just went, sure. But looking back, that's obviously not who I am as a person.
Why men struggle to open up.
You don't feel a judgment. When people look at you, there's a certain judgment, whether you know it or not, even if they're kind eyes coming at you.
And discovering his sexuality.
Your parents are always like, all right, what are you into? You're expected to try so many different things, but for some reason, when it comes to sexuality, especially when I was growing up, there was no discussion around it. It was so taboo.
Here's Rob Mills. So should we do some real talk?
Love real talk.
Using your own words?
I'm all about it. I love a real chat. I mean, look, I'll pretend that we're out on a bushwalk.
Yay. I don't have to look at you like in the eyes if you'd rather I turn off to the side like this and I'll just look at my paperwork.
We'll do the whole thing. Yeah, we'll do the whole thing to the
side by side.
Yeah, I feel much more comfortable. A lot of blokes we do feel more comfortable this way. Yeah.
It's an odd thing, isn't it? Like your book does talk a lot about masculinity and all of its various forms, but that kind of makes sense, right? Because us girls, God, we talk a lot about a lot of things. And we do really look each other in the face and in the eye and like we expect real conversation.
Yeah, you're experts.
We are pretty good at it. But it's actually unusual to read a book by a man like yourself who is, you know, pretty quintessentially Australian, if you want to delve into that, which you do quite a bit in your book on what it means to be quintessentially Australian men. But first, we're going to start in the obvious spot. And that is, of course, Australian Idol. which
Oh, yeah.
is 20 years ago. Does it feel like it's been 20 years since you were on that show?
No, it's pretty crazy, right? That 21, just a kid from the suburbs, had no real idea of who I was as a person or what I really wanted. I knew that I wanted to sing and dance. Well, maybe not dance. I was pretty bad at dancing. If you watch back the group numbers, I was giving it my all, though. I love to give it my all. But yeah, not really having any idea of who I was as a person, but knowing that I wanted to entertain, knowing that I wanted to perform it. I didn't really even know how. But after doing 4 years of singing in pubs around Melbourne, I think it was a friend of mine that told me about this audition, and I was like, yeah, I'll give it a go. I was in the sort of frame of mind, or that part of my life where I was like, I'll just give anything a go. In fact, I'm probably still there a lot of the time. I like saying yes to things, yes and. But yeah, it was an incredible experience. The first of, many seasons of the show, and to be part of the very first. I think Big Brother had started the year before that, which is just people sitting in the house and just having a chat. And ours was like also sitting in a house having a chat, except at the end of the week, we'd all perform, a minute and a half plus a group number. It was really cool. I thoroughly enjoyed the experience and being part of the beginnings, I suppose, of reality TV and how they put together a show and tried to manipulate, or not even manipulate at that stage, but just trying to work out how to make it.
You were talking a bit about how reality shows can manipulate the contestants who are on them. And you do talk about in your book how you're sort of positioned as this boy next door with a bit of a bad boy streak, with your spiky hair and your eyebrow ring kind of vibe, right? How long did you carry that caricature with you after you left that show?
Oh, a good couple of years. Yeah. I remember my manager at the time was like, we'll get you into nightclub appearances. So I wasn't really even singing at some of them. I was just turning up, getting paid to have a few drinks. And when I say a few drinks, a lot of drinks. I have a fair blackout period of my life there. Not because I was blackout drunk, but because I was drinking. I just don't really have any memories of the time like that are holistic kind of memories. I was going from gig to gig, party to party. Nothing crazy. I'm not trashing hotel rooms or anything like that. And I wasn't really a rock star, that kind of rock star. But as a kid, you take time to mature or to work out who you are as a person. I encourage anyone who's going on these shows, any kind of reality show, to have a very good sense of self before going on them, because then you actually know what you think and what you feel and what you're after. And I didn't really know that. I just knew that I like to entertain. And not even as an ego thing, like people looking at me. I just like to make people happy, I think. And I knew that singing did that. When I sang at pubs, people actually were like, that was really good. That was very enjoyable. Like they had a good time, so I had a good time. So I probably stayed in that kind of rebellious or boy next door or Millsy type character, I think, for a couple of years until I was sad. I just got really sad. I was like, why am I so sad? It was like, you don't know who you are. Like everyone has an idea of who you are. People yelling out, Millsy on the street. You're like, all right, good to see you. Thank you. And the Paris Hilton tag sort of was like hanging over my head everywhere I went, which is just so weird to me. But I was like, I don't want to be just that guy. So I started digging deeper, like, what do you want to do? Who are you? What do you stand for? And yeah, start reading books, start watching more movies, start going a bit deeper, start doing some therapy and start having some real conversations with people, including yourself.
But what actually started that? Because I know a ton of blokes that I grew up with who they didn't go on Australian Idol and go to nightclub appearances, but they certainly had that period of time where they were young men and they drank a lot and did lots of stupid stuff and have never really evolved from that. Like that is still their persona into their 30s and 40s. What is it about that moment that made you start to actually look at yourself internally rather than just keep on that hamster wheel and keep going in that life, because so many people do?
It's just sadness, probably. Like you wake up on a Monday after a big weekend and you're sad. I think with a lot of people, a lot of blokes especially, they go to work. They put themselves back into work. So they do put a lot of emphasis on their identity with their job. Their job is who they are. So I think on the Monday when they're hungover, instead of having those thoughts or horrible feelings of like, what have I done? Who am I? They're like, well, we'll just go to work. Oh, big weekend, mate. Yeah, big weekend. And that's a sort of badge of honor instead of, oh, I actually don't feel great about this. Or to work out, is that helping me go further at work, or is this helping me go further as a person or be a more well-rounded person? So I think for a lot of your friends, they had work to fall back on, to sort of focus on during the week. And then they, for some reason, especially in Australia, it's just like, well, I deserve a drink. I've earned this drink at the end of the week. I can forget about all that work that I did during the week. You're like, well, which is it? You're doing the thing to escape the other thing all the time instead of actually working at the person that sort of somehow sits in both of those worlds, the working guy and the partying guy. So I think for me, I didn't really have a job. I just had me. So you have to focus on what that is. And this is before social media. This is before the world of influencers, where people are like, well, this is me. I'm going to sell myself. My thing was still like, I want to entertain somehow, so I'll create work. So audition for things, create shows, one-man shows or band gigs, and yeah, just keep doing that.
You talked about being sad, right? Can we talk about that moment and I can't believe we used to do this, but during Idol times and Big Brother times too, there was the shopping centre appearances that used to happen quite a lot back in the day thousands of people would pack out a Westfield and some central area of a Westfield, and then you'd be kind of like paraded out into this tiny little section. Like people would be floors above staring down at you during these processes, and they would line up for hours to get autographs or photos or whatever. But there was a moment in time where one of those kind of tipped you over the edge. Do you want to talk about that?
My very first panic attack that I ever had, and I didn't know what it was, but yeah, it was a full-blown panic attack. I was overwhelmed. I'm quite extroverted as a person. So for all those that don't know, extroversion and introversion, extroversion means you get your energy from outside sources other than yourself. Introverted people are very good self-motivators because they don't need other people around them. So therefore, I like group activities. I like music on in the background, TV on, like anything to stimulate my energy. So anyway, this was a full overload. So think of all those thousands of people at that shopping center, plus the added bonus of, I think we performed as well. So you get your adrenaline up from singing in front of people, and then you're meant to sit down and sign autographs, and everyone just kept coming up. It was thousands of people in a line, and you're like, yep, hi, yep, no worries, yep. So what's your name? And then you're constantly giving out all this, let's call it positive energy, like just giving it out. And I think my adrenals just went through the roof, and I had a full-blown panic attack. I'm really sorry. I couldn't breathe. My heart was racing so fast. I think we're probably drinking too many Red Bulls at the time, maybe for energy. That probably didn't help. But I think it was a combination of all those things. I had to just get up and take a moment out the back room and just sit there and just breathe by myself for a bit. Everyone's like, you're right. I'm like, I think so. I think I'm dying. I think I'm having a heart attack. And at 21, I didn't know. And then I just brushed it off as if it was nothing.
You said it was your first one. Have you had others?
I had a few the years after Idol. Usually they came from big nights out, I would say. Your body, brain is not functioning as well as it probably could be. And then, maybe being recognised or sitting on a plane. I definitely had one on a plane one day. I just asked the lady next to me, can we just have a chat? She's like, yeah, sure. She had no idea who I was, but I just had a lovely chat just to calm my heart rate. I actually done it for someone else a few times. I actually bumped into a lady at the races just gone last year. She's like, Millsy, you probably don't remember me, but she goes, you talked me off a ledge last year. We're on a plane next to each other, and you just were really calm and so kind, and you just talked to me. She goes, you have no idea. I had such a big week. Lots of things had happened, and I was having a real moment, anxiety. And she goes, your energy was so lovely and calming. I was like, well, that's good. I feel like that's the pay it forward that the person did for me, all those years ago. So, always be kind to people. You never know what they're going through in the moment.
So Idol finishes, you've got a recording contract, right? How does that work when you come out of those reality shows? Because so much was said about signing that contract and, being a working artist. What were the conditions like for you? Like, were you earning good money off that contract?
No, not at all. I mean, I think it was a 30 grand, maybe 60 grand, possibly. Like you got a startup fee, but you have to pay that back anyway. But you don't have to pay it back if you don't make the money back. Does that make sense?
I guess.
From your album sales. Recoupable it is. Right. Yeah, it's something that they can recoup. So it was okay. It was better than, as I said, better than singing in the pubs. In the pubs, I think I got like $200 a gig, maybe. So this was a bit better. I think in the house we got paid $500 a week on Idols, and I was there for like 10 weeks or 8 weeks, something like that. maybe not even that long. So the album was good. The record label was BMG. The first thing that he said to me, he said, I want you to do a cover of Aerosmith's Love in an Elevator. And I thought, that's weird because they're still alive and that song's not that old. And no, thanks. So I didn't do that. I asked him if I could be put together with some songwriters and write some music. So I wrote like 20 songs. 7 of them made the album. The rest were like songs that people had written for me. So there's like 13 songs in the album. There's a couple of B-sides and some singles that I also wrote. Super proud of it. Like I'd never really done any proper songwriting. Like I did some in year 12 in music class and a little bit with my band that we were doing, but nothing that I was really, really proud of. And these songs, I was just stoked. I was so lucky. Still now, I'm like, I listen to the album, I go, that's really good. I think Cameron Adams from the Herald Sun at the time was like, this is the best Idol album to come out ever. So I was really chuffed. Got to work with some incredible people. And one of the things that still hurts me, there's 2 things. Triple M never played any of my rock songs. I was like, mate, these are absolute like rock bangers. They sounded like Maroon 5 kind of thing. And speaking of Maroon 5, that's the second thing. My manager at the time got asked if I would do the support for Maroon 5 and they said no. And that's still to this day, like, it was Songs of Jane had come out the year of Idol, I think it was. I sang Harder to Breathe at the Idol concert. Like I was obsessed with that album. And still to this day, I think it's one of the greatest albums from front to back. It's incredible.
Why did they say no?
I think the money was not very good at all. It was going to cost me basically
okay.
to go on tour with the band and to do all that. But I think I would have done it. I would have, absolutely. It would have been great for the songs. But yeah, I did a tour anyway. I toured from Cairns all the way down to Melbourne. Some gigs are like 20 people would turn up. Some gigs like 2,000. So like it was just randomly whatever city. Like in country, Victoria, we just sold out so many gigs and I had the best time. My brother came on the road with me and chaperoned and honestly, I loved it and got to play all my songs with a live band. It was awesome.
How hard did he have to chaperone you?
Oh, pretty good. I'm pretty, like when I'm working, I'm pretty good. Like if my brother says, come on, mate, you've had a few, that's enough, like kind of thing. So I'm very well behaved when I have to. Like when I work, I work. When I party, I party. Even now, like if I've got time off, I'll be like, I'll give it a nudge. But if I don't, I just don't. You just know when you can, you know when you got to work.
Can we talk a minute about Miss Vanity? So, song comes out in 2004.
Yeah, what a hit.
Brilliant song. Like,
thank you. I didn't write it, but
I was in my early 20s then. So like it was doing the rounds on commercial radio. Loved it. But can we discuss the film clip?
Oh, mate, it was dreadful.
I'm just going to jump in here to give you some context of what that film clip was like. Basically, Rob is emceeing a beauty contest. So he's surrounded by gorgeous women in bikinis and high heels. And that alone is not great, but they're all wearing sashes. And if you look close enough, their titles aren't things like Miss Australia. They're Miss Bitchy, Miss Easy, and Miss Trashy. I just need to know, did you have any input into the creation of that?
No, and that's one of the things that when you signed at a young age, I had no idea. I just thought record companies and they had all the people that did all the things and then they knew all the people to make all the cool things. But it turns out they don't. Turns out they're just people just trying to work stuff out as well. They don't quite know what they're doing. No one really knows what they're doing. I think as you get older, you realize that, right? But everyone's just trying to work it out. And the best possible thing to probably happen was to have more conversations around who I was, what kind of song. They were like, this will sell. We'll go off the back of the Paris Hilton thing. We'll have a blonde girl in the film clip. I had no idea. Honestly, I don't think I'd read the treatment and then got there on the day like, oh, it's going to be great. This is going to happen. I was like, oh, yep. Cool. As I said, having no real idea of who I was or what I stood for at the time, I was like, I just trusted everyone was doing the right thing by me. Turns out they weren't. They were just trying to do what they thought would sell the most, not what was right for the artist. I think that happens quite a lot in the world of music. It just depends on what kind of artist that you want to be. And it turns out I didn't really know at the time. So yeah, the film clip came out and I was like, oh, cool. This is naff. I remember it costing so much money. I was like, I wrote a treatment myself for what I wanted to be. I can't remember what it was now, but I remember writing a full shot by shot kind of thing. And then that just didn't go anywhere. So I was like, oh, cool. Wasn't very good. So I'll stop doing that. I'll stop adding input. Like I look back at that and go, huh, cool. Yep. I've got no answer other than that's the film clip that I was given, and then just went, sure. But looking back, that's obviously not who I am as a person. So
Eventually, the recording company decides to cancel your contract.
Yep.
What led to that, and how did you respond to it?
Oh, they merged with Sony, and there was a lot of acts on the list that just didn't get picked up by Sony, basically. The message I got was you didn't sell enough records, basically. I think the album sold like 30,000 copies in the first year, which I think is pretty good. In my brain, I was like, oh, that's just short of gold. For a first album, that's not bad for a kid. And then it was pretty disheartening. I was like, oh, maybe this is not for me. Maybe this is not what I should be doing.
But you describe it as like a lights out moment, right? The way I envisioned it when I was reading it in your book, it's like you're standing on a stage, the spotlight's on you, mic in hand, and all of a sudden the crowd leaves and they turn the lights off. But you're still standing there, right?
Yeah, I'm still standing. I'm like, all right, there's got to be something for me to do. And that, I think, took me a little while to find. I think it was 2005, I did Grease the Arena Spectacular. And I met all these wonderful musical theatre people who had this incredible work hard, party hard ethic. They were so lovely, generous, talented. And I was like, oh, this is great. This world is excellent. How do I do this? How do I get a part of this world? And they told me about new shows that were coming to Australia, and I'd never dreamed that would be for me at all. Like I always thought, I'll just be a pub singer, or I'll sing in bands or write songs, and that didn't happen for me. So I was like, oh, maybe this is it. And I found out about Wicked, and I went and saw that in 2006 over on the West End. I saw Adam Garcia and Helen Dallimore, two Aussies, in the show, and I went, if they can do it, like they were amazing. The show was incredible. I got to see Idina Menzel, and I thought, this is great. I could do that. I mean, sure, I need to learn how to dance and sing and act. I did some drama in year 11.
Just some minor things that you might need in a career in the theatre.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So I vowed from that moment that I would come home. I was going to stay in London and use my 2-year working visa and do traveling and stuff. But I went, nah, I'm going to come back and take acting classes and do it in Australia. And that's what I did, acting classes, singing lessons, and knew that Wicked was coming the following year, or in a couple of years' time, sorry. So, yeah, I just worked really hard for a couple of years. I put my head down and wrote a show, wrote a couple of different little cabaret gigs that I did, which are dreadful. But, like, you've got to do some crap ones to get better. That's part of it. And then, yeah, just those acting classes and singing lessons really paid off, and having that beacon, something to look forward to or something to aspire to. And then when the show came to town, I had to beg the producers to even get me an audition. It was 5 years after Idol. There'd been 4 other Idols since then. So there was other people coming through. I'd worked so hard and just put my everything into it. Yeah. So I had 4 auditions in front of all the creators from America and the Australian producers, and then I eventually got the job. So it changed my life. February the 2nd, every year I celebrate Wicked Day. It's the day that I got the gig. I get emotional just thinking about it. Like, it's the day that completely changed my life. Like, I wouldn't be who I am today if I hadn't found musical theatre. It's a reminder of working hard for the thing that you want. Birthdays, Christmas, I don't really celebrate that much, but like that day, like that's the day that changed everything.
After the break, Rob opens up about the moments he's fallen victim to toxic masculinity, pushing him to land a punch or two. Can we backtrack a little bit? What's interesting, we're talking about the sort of masculine image you were given on Idol. It's interesting when at that time, when you talk about in the book, that this was a time where you started to explore your sexuality outside of being hetero. And a lot of people would have read the headlines about the quote-unquote orgy with Courtney Act and another person, which Courtney Act has said, how vanilla are you to call that an orgy?
Which is hilarious. I was plugging a shade a few times about it. I hosted him for a book thing for him the other day, and we laughed about it. There was a lot of people in the room like, shame, Rob. Shame. Just shame upon the queer community. I was like, oh, guys, come on. I was young. I was new. I didn't know what I was doing. I was just trying it out. I was talking to someone the other day about this, that when you're a kid, your parents are always like, all right, what are you into? Like, is it badminton? Is it little aths? Is it swimming? Is it cricket? Is it footy? Is it netball? Like, you're expected to try so many different things. But for some reason, when it comes to sexuality, especially when I was growing up, there was no discussion around it. it was so taboo. It was so conservative in Australia. I don't think so anymore in 2023. I think we're definitely far more progressive, not as progressive as the far left would love. I think we've definitely moved so far in the last 20 years. But yeah, it was a wonderful time. I talk about it in the book, and I think for a lot of blokes, whether straight, queer, bi-curious or gay, there's this sort of shame and guilt that sits around it, or did sit around it. And unfortunately, that probably still exists in parts of Australia and the world. The thing I was trying to get across in the book is, who cares? Like, explore it, go for it, find your tribe, find the people that are going to support you in this world. They don't have to necessarily be your family or bloodline, but there is a family for you. There is a tribe that is around that will support these choices. And if it is just trying it out, who cares? You're just trying it out. Give it a go. As long as you're not hurting yourself, and as long as you're not hurting other people, let your freak flag fly. And I mean that in the best possible sense. I'm not calling you freaks. I also identify as queer. So, yeah, it's something that I think we've gotten a lot better in the last 20 years. There's still room to go.
How did you feel about that when you're, 20-something, just come out of Idol, there's eyeballs on you all the time, and you're experimenting really for the first time? Did you feel like you had to keep that a secret at that time?
Oh, yeah. Whether consciously or subconsciously, it was definitely in my mind. It was definitely playing on my mind. I probably didn't talk about it enough to my brother, or I didn't talk about it enough to anyone really, because I was trying to process it myself. I think earlier therapy would have definitely helped me in whatever form that takes, a counsellor or psychotherapist or therapist or whatever. But I did seek help 23, 24, I think it was, maybe 25, something like that, which definitely helped. And I started reading some books around just mental health, and that's when I sort of first started getting interested in it. I was like, oh, if I'm feeling this way, there's definitely lots of people feeling this way. It's just taken me a while to put all the words down in the book, which I'm glad I did. I definitely feel it was incredibly therapeutic. And this is no way does anyone need to go out and write a book to feel better about themselves. It's a very stressful thing, but I would highly recommend going to see a therapist or a psychotherapist or whatever kind of counsellor, or at the very least, tell a friend on a long walk.
Now, your book talks a lot about masculinity, what it is, what it looks like when it goes toxic. And you talk about a time in your life where you became physically violent with other people. And as you've already mentioned, it was around the conversation that continually to this day happens around your very short relationship with Paris Hilton. But when you were confronted in the street by people, men in particular, who said really awfully derogatory things about Paris Hilton to your face, and sometimes whilst physically holding on to you, why do you think you went to violence in that moment? Because you've punched people out for this kind of stuff, right?
I've only thrown 2 punches in my life, and both of them were for that. Yeah, for that reason. Just rudeness, lack of manners, after asking them not to talk about it, after being like, one time I was in front of my partner at the time when it was talked about in front of her, and I was like, what the, like, and I'm not saying everyone deserves a whack, like, but at that point I was like, what, this, the disrespect. Like, I'm sure people listening are like, just walk away, Rob. Just walk away. Honestly, to this day, I should have walked away both times. But yeah, just disrespect. I just felt so riled up by it. And yeah, to this day, I still feel cringy about it, about doing it. There was adrenaline flowing through me. The shock of it that had happened. I cried, I think, for doing it. I'm a bit of a crier. I was like, I can't believe I did that. I'm sorry I hurt someone. Like,
Sorry, I probably would cry if I punched someone too.
Yeah, it just felt like, why is this happening? Why? I think it was like funny for their friends, and I am the first person to put my hand up to take the piss out of myself and self-deprecate. So I'm fine with all that stuff. That's not the thing that gets me. I think it was the disrespect.
Does it still make you angry now when people bring it up?
I think only if I've asked them, could they not talk about it, and they still want to talk about it. It seems a weird, I hate this phrase, but dare I say the locker room chat kind of thing. And I'm like, I don't want to talk about it. It's not a trophy. I have a fiance. Like, why are we doing this? Why is this titillating to you? There's nothing exciting happened in your life to, I don't know. It seems odd to me.
and I'm not justifying those people saying awful things and disrespectful things. You do see, though, that like in that moment you were with arguably the most famous woman on the planet at that time.
Georgie's reminded me of that.
Like, you got to understand the interest in that, right?
Subjectively, yes. Objectively, yes. But at the time, as I said, having no real sense of self or any idea of the world that I lived in, at the time I was like, who cares? And I still don't really care about the world of celebrity, or they're just people. People are just people. I think we, for some reason, put so much emphasis on what celebrities say or what they do or how they think about things. Like, they're not an expert. Why are you asking these people? I've never really been one to gush over anyone, really. Good people, funny people, maybe. John Farnham, definitely. But that's a talent thing, not just of what they say. They have to have a talent, I think, for me, or they have to be really smart. So, yeah, I've never been one to gush over celebrity. So that's why I think I still even now find it foreign.
Have you ever felt jealousy when your fellow Idol contestants were successful? Like when you saw, especially in those times where you didn't know where your career was going, sort of before you stepped onto the stage.
A pang.
Did you ever have those, little pangs? Like when you see Guy Sebastian doing amazing things and, making records with international artists?
No, I just, honestly, maybe early on, maybe very, very early on, maybe for the first year, maybe. But after that, nah. I'm so proud. I'm so proud of him. So proud of Shan. I still call them mates. We don't talk all the time, but like we'll definitely touch base at least a couple of times a year. And it's always so wonderful. There's like a joy. There's like you've experienced that thing that no one else has. But no, I think the world that we live in, there is always like our FOMO has never been greater. And that's not just from my Idol experience, but like just looking at other people on Instagram, looking at all the things that are like, God, that should be me. I spoke to my mate Bobby Fox. We were on a walk the other day. He goes, the world is riddled with shoulds. Should have this, should do that, should have been me, should have like, it's so good. The world is riddled with shoulds. I was like, that's good. I'm going to use that. But I think that's natural. That's why we have our limits on our Instagram for the day. Like, what? That's enough FOMO. That's enough narcissism for you, Robert. Get away from it. You don't need to look at that. Poor me. Stop playing the victim. Just go and actually read a book or go and actually do something. You'll feel better about your life. Go do something for someone else.
You do. You mentioned walking with your mate and having conversations. You talk quite a bit in your book about not having face-to-face conversations between men.
Yeah, we hate it.
Why do you hate that so much? What is so confronting about looking someone in the face and having a conversation?
I don't think I'm alone in this. I actually don't mind having face-to-face conversations with people. I'm just saying it's definitely easier for a lot of people. And this is not gender specific at all. I think for people in general, when you're sitting in the car, you're going for a drive with your partner or a friend, you find that you have these incredible open conversations. Me and Georgie have incredible conversations just on a walk, just going for a walk. We might not talk in the house at all. Start walking, boom. Blah, blah, blah,
is that
blah,
how
blah,
you got
blah,
to
blah,
proposing? You just walked up a mountain, you weren't looking at her face and you're like, yep, this is the right moment.
This is it. Yeah, this is the moment. I don't have to look at her face. Perfect. That's definitely not it. Actually, it was in the car. So, yeah, it was perfect. It was perfect timing. It was perfect timing. You don't feel a judgment. When people look at you, there's a certain judgment, whether you know it or not, even if they're kind eyes coming at you. It's the kind judgment. That's the worst one. That's the one that gets you in the feels. No, I'm joking. I think there's always a certain judgment that comes from, or perceived judgment from someone else. But when you're out for a walk or you're in the car or you don't have that. You have a free flow of consciousness that just sort of happens. I don't know what the science is behind it. All I know is that it just happens. It works. I was speaking to people about it and they're all like, yep, this happens. Definitely happens.
Just to switch gears a bit. Does Millsy, the character, still exist, or are we in the era of Rob Mills?
Oh, Millsy still exists, I suppose. He's the guy who still gets called out at the pub. Millsy! I'll get up and grab the microphone at a pub and get up and have a sing. Yeah, I suppose he still exists, but I haven't seen him for a while. Rob Mills he's working very hard in a musical rehearsal room at the moment, trying to learn his lines, trying to convey a beautiful story and trying to cook dinners for his partner, trying to keep the house clean, do the washing.
I guess I'm asking that because you do seem like, and I mean, the news stories that we see about Rob Mills now are very different to the news stories we were reading about Rob Mills, 10, 15 years ago.
Mm.
And now it's like how to dry date with your partner, according to Rob Mills. So your relationship with alcohol seems to have changed quite a bit over the years.
Yeah.
What's the worst time of your relationship with alcohol as opposed to where you are now?
My worst time would have been just after Idol, for sure. Those sort of blackout years of drinking.
You mentioned about something that happened in Madrid. What happened in Madrid?
Oh, man, I just woke up on the street. Just like it was probably 10 o'clock in the morning. I woke up like on a footpath. Yeah. I had no idea where I was. I don't know how I got there. Just woke up there. I obviously been out drinking the night before. I woke up in the sun just going, I'm so hot. Why am I so hot? Oh, my God, I'm on the street. And I would say maybe 5 years. No, it was before I met Georgie, probably 6 years ago. I reckon I woke up in Bondi somewhere in someone's bed. Someone had put me in the bed, full blackout drunk.
But like in a good way, because if any woman says to me I woke up in someone's bed, then that's a really scary moment.
I think someone had found me on the street and put me in the bed.
Like actually just nicely took care of you.
Yeah. To this day, I don't know who it was, but they took a photo of me asleep out the front. And I woke up in their bed. As I said, that's 6 or 7 years ago now.
Does that not scare you though that you could have like died in those instances?
No. I talked to Georgie about this, about the times that I've been, that's definitely reckless. That's reckless behavior. That's drinking with no off switch. And she's like, that just never occurs to me at all as a woman. There's no possible way that, and I said, I've never thought of that. I think I ended the chapter talking about the fact that for blokes, we just don't think about women having to go through that.
That's some crazy privilege.
It's exactly. It's crazy privilege. It's the thing that we just never thought of for a lot of blokes. And I think that's at a bare minimum. I'm definitely not speaking for women, but from the research that I did, that's at a bare minimum, that's what blokes should be doing, is looking at that privilege and going, oh, I acknowledge it and I see you and I gotcha.
So what's your relationship with alcohol like now? And what's dry dating, by the way? I just read a headline.
Dry dating?
Yeah.
So dry dating is, I was working at nights doing a play and Georgie was working early mornings in breakfast television. So we would have brunches and go for coffee walks. So that's how we dated. Our whole courtship was basically, I think there may have been 1-2 drinks.
What difference does it make to do that sober?
You remember everything, for one. You're getting to know the person wholly as who they are. You have a deeper connection. Yeah, I think you just have an even better connection with someone just because you're talking solely to their soul, to their person, to who they are. Also, the walking and the coffee thing helps.
And not looking at her in the eyes, yes?
No. This is I went on a few coffee dates before meeting Georgie, and some of them will go for coffee. Like if you're drinking and walking, it's like 20 minutes, 30 minutes, maybe. It's like 30 minutes for a coffee and a walk. Like a round trip around the Tan here in Melbourne is about that. The good thing about that, once the coffee's finished, you're like, do you want to get another one? If it's going well, or if it's finished, you're like, well, that was fun. It's a period of school. It's like 40 minutes, It's like, that's enough, we know that gauge of 40 minutes. It's an episode of your favorite show. That's about how long you've got. You can sort of work out whether you want to go for another coffee or keep walking, or if not, it's like, well, the coffee's done, so I'm off. Thanks for that. That was lovely. You don't have to sit around for an hour and a half, 2 hours at a dinner. Ugh, yuck, looking at them from across the way, trying to ask all the... That's not for me.
When did you realise Georgie was your person?
I don't know. Maybe a few months in, maybe. It was a few months in. 4 months in, maybe. I can't remember. In the grand scheme of things, that's pretty early, isn't it? She's just lovely. She's just a little nerd. I don't want to go into the details because that's pretty personal to Georgie and I, but I think it was around about 4. She's just so lovely and hardworking and funny and just a kind person. Kindness is the best. You can't beat kindness, inquisitiveness, and also she's very funny.
She's also crazy smart.
Yeah, the brain helps. She's got a giant brain. She definitely has a giant brain.
How'd that go with writing a book and getting her to read the pages?
She read so many pages for me. I'd love it to have a producer at times to go through stuff. She's like, sometimes you're like, you don't need this bit. You don't need this whole chunk. I was like, this is funny, right? Nah, it's okay, funny. Okay, I'll rewrite it. So it was great to have a writing coach. Also, massive shout out to Paul Connolly, who helped curate all the interviews and put all the words together, all my ramblings, and our back and forth was great. And his writing was imperative to putting it all together for me.
How do you guys go now? I mean, Georgie's doing the project regularly now, which is, from all accounts of everyone who's now come off of that show, it's a pretty tough gig to have. And then you're doing theatre, which is going to go for runs of nights. How do you guys go with coordinating your lives now that they've changed?
Don't know yet. This is the first time I've done a big run where we're in the process of sort of working that out. It's going to be planning. We're both dreadful at planning. So it's going to be planning stuff to do on our mornings, which is good. We've got our mornings to have our walks, and then our Monday nights will be date night, and then trying to fit in friends with those date nights. So it could be trivia nights and stuff. I think we'll just end up doing dinner parties here so we can do both us and friend time, because friend time for us is also super important, and I can never underestimate just how important that is to your existence. I think a lot of people put so much pressure on the relationship about them being all things. I don't know, Georgie likes to say, I am all things. I'm like, you are all things, but I can't get everything from you. I think people put a lot of pressure on their relationship, and this is why I think a lot of relationships break down, is that, well, they're not doing all the things. Like, they can't. It's not possible. There's no way that this one person can do all the things for you all the time. You need to get some stuff from other people, friends, family, workmates, whatever it is. But it's just too much pressure for one person.
Well, Rob Mills, it was nice to meet you.
Lovely to meet you.
Aside from the Millsy character that we've all created in our heads of who you are over the years and the stories attached to you, it's nice to get to know the real you. Thanks.
Is your perception changed?
I think so. I really think so. I think I thought you were those men that I was telling you about who are party boys and never really quite get over it. You know, I mean, aside from being disappointed that you're a Hawthorn supporter, but we can get past that. But like, after reading the book and talking to you, I can see that you're doing something that a lot of people don't do, and that's just to look within, be introspective, right? Understand who you are, why you do things, why you think certain ways. And a lot of people never do that. I mean, I've got a dad who's probably barely done that in his entire life. He's nearly 80. So,
and this is the thing. This is the shocking thing, that they're trying to work out why you might be unhappy, or this stoicism is like great for certain things, but it's also dreadful for so many others. So many things will get left unsaid. There's this thing Reverend Bill Cruz said to me when I interviewed him. One of the best takeaways, his book is fantastic, by the way, was like, say the things. Don't let anything go unsaid. Like, tell your dad that you love him. Like, even if he doesn't say anything back, like, say the things. Because if you don't say it, they could be gone, you know, and you never got to say the things. Why are we holding back? Why are blokes holding back, not saying the things, or not saying to their partners, hey, when you did that, that really pissed me off. Or to the women who have got, you know, partners, hey, that really annoyed me when that happened. Can we talk about it for a bit? Not all the time. I can't keep talking about it. It's a lot.
You've just opened up the floodgates of a lot of conversation.
But like, just have the chat. At least have it. It doesn't need to resolve. You need to be heard. It's a human thing. We need to be heard. And I hope more blokes feel like their voice can be heard, or like they can say the things, or just, I don't know. Like, even that is a great start. It's better than nothing.
Yeah, but sometimes saying I don't know means, in your own mind, how could I not know? Like, people will judge me for not knowing. There's so much shame involved in that, right?
So much shame. That's the thing that blokes are working through, I think, now in this new era of better blokes. How do we share better? Sometimes they feel more comfortable sharing in a men's circle, or blokes. For some blokes, it's talking to their sisters or talking to their other best friends, or some just feel more comfortable talking to blokes. Some just will take themselves out to a psych or whatever to unpack some stuff. There is no right answer for anything other than communication is better. Like, a problem shared is a problem halved. I think that's the old saying. So just, say the things.
Well, now's your time to say the things. Plug the book, plug the show. Tell us about them.
So the book is out. You can find it at all good bookstores. You can find an audio version, which I did as well. There's a few added things in the audio version that I was like, oh, that was good.
More than the orgy?
I just commented on a few things. No, it's not heaps different, but I definitely commented on a few things. Like, oh, or I read it differently. I don't know. It was really fun.
So there was ad-libbed like director's cut in the audio.
Yeah,
version.
there's a few ad-lib lines in there.
Right.
And the show that I'm doing is this wonderful, beautiful. It's a jukebox musical, but don't be dismayed. It is a show full of heart and great stories and great through line. It's called And Juliet. It's a retelling of Romeo and Juliet, where Juliet finds her true self. I don't know what's happened over the years, whether fate has done it or I've chosen these roles or the roles have come to me, but I've been part of some really wonderful female empowerment shows like Wicked, Ghost the Musical, definitely Legally Blonde, and now And Juliet is all about female empowerment and progressiveness and just being better people and having second chances.
Thank you so much to my guest, Rob Mills. His book is called Putting on a Show. It is an amazingly good read. We'll put a link to it in our show notes so you can check it out and maybe buy yourself a copy too. We'll also link to And Juliet as well, the latest production that he's involved in, which from early audience members are telling us it is ridiculously fun. The producer of No Filter is Emmeline Peterson. Our executive producer is Eliza Ratliff, with sound production by Madeline Joannou. And I'm Claire Murphy.